You know they're hurting you, you've said it out loud, you've told your friends, you've even packed your bags, and yet you stayed. You went back to the person who broke you, and you cannot explain why. That pull you feel is not love, it's not loyalty, it's not even hope. It is a neurochemical hijacking happening inside your brain right now, and it operates on the exact same mechanism as drug addiction. Trauma bonding is addiction. Your nervous system has been rewired to confuse suffering with safety. And every time they hurt you and then come back with warmth, your brain releases a cocktail of dopamine and oxytocin so powerful that it overrides every rational thought you've ever had. Today, we're going to dissect this mechanism completely. We'll explore how intermittent reinforcement traps you, why your childhood wired you for this, and most importantly, how to finally break free from a bond that was never love in the first place. As the psychologist Patrick Carnes warned, trauma bonds are the misuse of fear, excitement, and sexual feelings to entangle another person. By the end of this video, you will understand exactly what is happening to you, and you will never see your relationship the same way again. Imagine being chained to something you cannot see. There are no bruises on your wrists, no locks on the door. You are free to leave at any moment, and yet something holds you in place with a grip stronger than steel. That is what a trauma bond feels like from the inside. From the outside, people say just leave, as if your legs work, as if your brain hasn't been chemically altered to need this person the way a drowning person needs air. The bond is not emotional, it is biological. Here's what's actually happening. When someone subjects you to cycles of cruelty followed by kindness, your brain enters a state psychologists call intermittent reinforcement. It is the same mechanism that makes gambling addictive. You never know when the reward is coming, so your brain stays in a constant state of anticipation, flooding you with dopamine every time the pain stops and the warmth returns. The relief from pain feels identical to pleasure in the traumatized brain. You are not staying because you are weak. You are staying because your brain has been trained to interpret the absence of cruelty as love, and that distinction changes everything about how we understand this. Let's go deeper into your brain for a moment, because what's happening there will disturb you. In a healthy relationship, dopamine flows at a steady, predictable rate. You feel safe, you feel calm. But in an abusive dynamic, dopamine operates on a starvation and feast cycle. Starvation. During the cruel phase, your dopamine levels crash. You feel anxious, desperate, worthless. Your brain enters withdrawal, identical to what a heroin addict experiences between fixes. Then comes the warmth phase, a kind word, a gentle touch, an apology that sounds sincere. And your dopamine doesn't just return to normal, it spikes far above baseline. That spike is what keeps you hooked. Neuroscientist Jacques Panksepp demonstrated that the brain's reward system responds more intensely to unpredictable rewards than to consistent ones. The inconsistency is the drug. If they were cruel all the time, you would leave. If they were kind all the time, you wouldn't be addicted. It is the oscillation between the two that creates a chemical dependency so powerful that leaving feels like dying. If this pattern is making you rethink everything you thought you knew about love, hit like and subscribe to keep exploring the depths of your psyche with me. Because what comes next goes even deeper into how your past set you up for this. Here is the part that hurts the most to hear. The trauma bond you're experiencing right now was not created by your partner. It was created in your childhood. Childhood wired your brain. Attachment theory, pioneered by John Bowlby and expanded by Mary Ainsworth, reveals that the way your primary caregiver treated you in your first years of life literally built the template for every relationship you would ever have. If your caregiver was inconsistent, sometimes warm and sometimes cold, sometimes present and sometimes absent, your nervous system adapted. It learned that love is unreliable, that closeness comes with pain, that you must earn affection by managing someone else's emotions. You did not choose this partner by accident. Your nervous system recognized them. Psychologist Bessel van der Kolk describes this in his groundbreaking work. As he explains, we are attracted to what is familiar, even if it is painful, because the brain equates familiarity with safety. Your partner's behavior feels normal to you because it mirrors the emotional landscape of your childhood. The chaos feels like home, and that is why leaving feels like losing yourself, not just losing them. But this brings us to something even more chilling about what happens to your identity inside this bond. One of the most devastating effects of trauma bonding is something rarely discussed. It erases you, not suddenly, not violently, but gradually, like water wearing down stone, until one day you look in the mirror and cannot recognize the person staring back. You have become a ghost of who you used to be. This happens through a process psychologists call identity erosion. The abusive partner slowly replaces your reality with theirs. Your opinions become wrong. Your feelings become overreactions. Your memories become unreliable. This is gaslighting, and its purpose is not just to control your behavior. It is to dismantle your sense of self so completely that you cannot imagine existing without them. No identity, no escape. Think about it. How can you leave someone when you no longer know who you are without them? How can you trust your judgment when every judgment you've made has been questioned, mocked, or punished? The abuser doesn't just take your freedom. They take your ability to believe you deserve freedom. And this manufactured helplessness is precisely what makes the bond feel unbreakable. But here is something the abuser never counted on, something about the brain that works in your favor. In 1973, 4 hostages were held captive in a bank vault in Stockholm, Sweden for 6 days. When they were finally rescued, something bizarre happened. They defended their captors. They refused to testify against them. One hostage even became engaged to one of the robbers. Bonded. The world was stunned, but psychologists recognized something profound. Under conditions of captivity, threat, and intermittent kindness, the human brain forms an attachment to the source of both pain and relief. It is a survival mechanism, and it is exactly what happens in an abusive relationship. Your bond to your abuser follows the same neurological pattern as Stockholm Syndrome. Researcher D. Graham expanded this theory specifically to domestic abuse, calling it societal Stockholm Syndrome. She identified 4 conditions necessary for the bond to form: a perceived threat to survival, small kindnesses from the abuser, isolation from other perspectives, and a perceived inability to escape. 1. Perceived threat to survival. 2. Small kindnesses from the abuser. 3. Isolation from outside perspectives. 4. Perceived inability to escape. If you recognize all 4 conditions in your relationship, you are not in love, you are in captivity. And the first step to freedom is understanding that what you feel is not a choice. It is a survival response that no longer serves you. Now let's talk about the cruelest trick your brain plays on you: oxytocin. Often called the love hormone, oxytocin is released during physical touch, intimacy, and emotional closeness. In healthy relationships, it deepens trust and connection. But in a trauma bond, oxytocin becomes a weapon against you. Oxytocin becomes a weapon. After every episode of abuse, the reconciliation phase floods your body with oxytocin. The make-up intimacy, the tearful apologies, the promises of change. Your brain cannot distinguish between oxytocin released during genuine love and oxytocin released during the relief phase of abuse. As neuroscientist Dr. Sue Carter's research on pair bonding demonstrates, oxytocin doesn't create love, it creates attachment. An attachment can form under any conditions, including terror. This is why victims of abuse often describe feeling more intensely connected to their abuser than to anyone they've ever known. The intensity is real, the love is not. What you are experiencing is a chemical illusion manufactured by cycles of pain and relief. And recognizing the difference between intensity and genuine intimacy might be the most important distinction you ever make. There's a war happening inside your mind right now, and you probably don't even know it. On one side, you have the evidence, the cruelty, the manipulation, the tears, the broken promises. On the other side, you have the belief you desperately need to maintain, that this person loves you, that it will get better, that you can fix them. These 2 truths cannot coexist, and your brain is breaking under the strain. This is cognitive dissonance, first described by psychologist Leon Festinger. When your brain holds 2 contradictory beliefs simultaneously, it creates unbearable psychological tension. And to resolve that tension, your brain doesn't choose the truth. It chooses the belief that requires the least painful action. Leaving requires admitting you were wrong. Staying only requires making excuses. So you minimize, you rationalize. You say things like they didn't mean it, or it's not that bad, or everyone has problems. You rewrite your own memories to make the abuse smaller and the good moments bigger. This is not stupidity. This is your brain's desperate attempt to protect you from the devastating realization that the person you love is the person destroying you. And this cognitive prison brings us to perhaps the most insidious mechanism of all. In 1979, psychologist Lenore Walker identified a pattern so consistent across abusive relationships that she called it the cycle of violence. And understanding this cycle is like suddenly seeing the code of the Matrix. Once you see it, you cannot unsee it. The cycle has 4 phases. First, tension building. You walk on eggshells, you monitor their mood, you modify your behavior, you become hypervigilant, scanning for the storm you know is coming. Second, the incident, the explosion, verbal, emotional, physical, or all 3. Third, reconciliation, the apology, the tears, the gifts, the promises. This is when oxytocin floods your system and you feel closest to them. forth the calm, the honeymoon, things are good, you exhale. You think this time it's really different. Tension, incident, reconcile, calm. And then phase 1 begins again. Each time the cycle repeats, the abuse escalates slightly and the honeymoon shortens. As Viktor Frankl once wrote from his own experience of captivity, an abnormal reaction to an abnormal situation is normal behavior. Your response to this cycle is not a flaw. It is a perfectly normal adaptation to an abnormal environment. The problem is that the environment will never change, but you still can. So how do you break a bond that exists at the neurochemical level? How do you leave when your own brain is working against you? Awareness. The first step is exactly what you're doing right now. Understanding. When you can name what is happening to you, it loses power. The fog begins to lift. The excuses stop making sense. Dr. Judith Herman, author of Trauma and Recovery, outlines a process that begins with safety and stabilization. You do not have to leave today, but you must start creating spaces of psychological safety outside the relationship. 1. Name the pattern you are living. 2. Build connections outside the bond. 3. Work with a trauma-informed therapist. 4. Practice self-compassion daily. 5. Create a safety plan before leaving. Recovery from trauma bonding is not about willpower. It is about rewiring your nervous system. This means your brain will go through withdrawal. You will feel an overwhelming urge to go back. You will idealize the good moments and minimize the bad ones. This is not love calling you back. It is addiction, and like any addiction, the withdrawal is temporary. The chains can be broken, but you must be willing to sit with the pain of freedom until your brain learns that safety does not require suffering. Here is the most hopeful truth in all of psychology. Your brain can change. Neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to form new neural pathways at any age, means that the patterns wired into you by abuse and by childhood can be rewritten. Your brain can heal. Research by neuroscientist Dr. Norman Doidge demonstrates that with consistent new experiences, the brain literally reorganizes itself. The pathways that made chaos feel like home begin to weaken. New pathways that associate safety with calm, with respect, with consistency, begin to strengthen. Every day you spend away from the toxic bond, your brain builds a new blueprint for love. This does not happen overnight. It happens in moments. In the moment you choose not to answer the text. In the moment you call a friend instead. In the moment you sit with the discomfort of being alone and discover that alone is not the same as abandoned. As the philosopher Epictetus understood 2,000 years ago, no man is free who is not master of himself. Freedom from a trauma bond is not the absence of feelings for that person. It is the presence of something stronger. The understanding that you deserve a love that does not require you to lose yourself to keep it. What you've learned today is not just information, it is liberation. The trauma bond you are in, or the one you survived, was never a reflection of your worth. It was a reflection of your wiring. Wiring that was installed before you had any say in the matter, and reinforced by someone who used your deepest need for connection as a weapon against you. Not your fault, never was. But here is what matters now. You have seen behind the curtain. You understand the dopamine trap, the oxytocin lie, the cognitive dissonance, the cycle. And once you see these mechanisms for what they are, they can never fully control you again. The bond may still pull, the memories may still ache, but now you know that what you felt was not love. It was a neurochemical addiction to the relief that follows pain. And you deserve better than relief. You deserve peace. If you made it this far, comment bond broken to prove you're ready to choose yourself over the cycle. The wound is the place where the light enters you. Welcome to the Psyche Project.